109 entries. Do you know what the most used game engine was for this game jam? Because I never would have guessed that it would be. So this is the game I submitted to February's mini jam a month. Normally, after submission, I'd play and rate at least 10 games that haven't been rated and the top 10 games on the leaderboard, and then sit down and think about where it all went wrong. But lately, I've been wondering what other devs are doing and how they're doing it. So when I saw that there were only 109 entries, I decided to try them all, and I found some stuff that genuinely surprised me. There was a 1 week window for rating in which I thought I could do them all, but between work, having my first child, and a bunch of other life things, I only made it through 50, and I didn't finish the rest until this week. So I did my best to try every game, but some look sus, even to run in a VM, and some were just made for odd formats, like the Ouya. I definitely wasn't going to try to figure out how to emulate those. And some were physical games, like PDFs that you download and play. Nothing wrong with that, it's just not my bag. So I ended up playing 92 out of the 109 submissions, and here's what I learned. A lot of developers are using Godot. I did my best to figure out what engines these games were developed with, and by far, Godot was the most used, and the second most was Unity. Everything else was scattered between various engines, including some in Basic C. That other category is just games that I couldn't figure out what they were made in. Now, I assumed Unity would have been the most used, so my question for y'all is why Godot? Did Unity's price change debacle really move that many of y'all over to Godot? Or am I just out of touch? Also, only 2 other developers used Unreal. Of course, my other question is why not Unreal? I know I'm biased, but does Unreal feel inaccessible to most developers these days? I really want to know. Let me know what you think in the comments. Also, I was curious about team sizes. As a solo developer, I just wanted to know what other people were doing. And I found that the vast majority of people that entered this game jam were solo developers, and the largest team that entered was a team of 12. They did put out one of my favorite games in this jam, and it was probably the most polished, but most of the games in my top 5 are made by teams of 1. Another thing I noticed was there's a lot of incomplete entries, right? Which is normal in a game jam as life gets in the way, right? Sometimes we overscope and we just don't get stuff done. That's okay. I've been there before. But one of the things I wanted to point out is a lot of these incomplete games would either like have no description or have a note that says something like, sorry, my game sucks. This is my first game. I know that it's bad. I just wanted to address that a little bit. Game jams are full of people that are willing to give you constructive criticism on your work, give you tips to help you improve. And if you're submitting an incomplete project, it is a good idea to tell people what is working and what's not working. And that way, when someone comes along who genuinely does want to give you good advice, they know what they can look at and they know what you already know doesn't work. And then it's also just like having a little bit of pride in your work. Like, even if you make bad projects, the only way to make good projects is to make bad projects first, right? So the act of completing a game jam is impressive as it is. So I'd encourage y'all to take pride in your work and point out what is working so people can give you constructive criticism. So the other thing I was curious about is what's being submitted. Every game jam that I've entered has a theme, but this was the first one that had a theme that was optional, right? Now the theme was space, and you were allowed to interpret space however you wanted to. The majority of projects submitted did fit the theme, and the majority of projects submitted went with the traditional idea of space, meaning outer space, interstellar stuff. Most of the submissions were also done for the game jam itself, but there was a decent amount of submissions that were just people trying to, I think it was people trying to get some attention on games they had already made. They didn't fit the theme. They would just submit projects they had already made to the game jam, and I don't think that works. I don't know why people are doing it. Like, when I looked at the leaderboard, all the games that fit that description were nowhere near like the top of the leaderboard. They might have only had 2 or 3 ratings, so I don't really understand why that's going on. But I did want to point out that the best games came from not only people who follow the theme, but they also like took a twist on the word space, right? So instead of just making a game about outer space like I did, there were people that like took physical space into account and tried to make games around that. There was even a nice little home decorating game where you decorate Dracula's house. It's called Revamp My Space. I think the reason why those games came out so good is because when you embrace a limitation, it forces you to be creative, right? So if you're joining a game jam, I encourage you to just follow the theme. Last thing I want to do is cloud up my top 5 games in this game jam because these developers really did do a good job and I think they deserve some recognition. So the first one is called Defender of the Ring. It's a pretty straightforward shoot 'em up style game. All you gotta do is kill the enemies, level up, and not shoot the barrier. But every time you shoot the barrier, the amount of space that you have, the ring that you have, gets smaller and smaller and smaller, making it harder and harder to play. I just thought this was a really creative take on the word space. So the second game I want to shout out is called Spacebar. Spacebar is a game where you play in a spacebar and you can only use the spacebar button, right? So you're in the spacebar, you hold the spacebar to drink and you release the spacebar to throw your drink. The goal is to be as drunk as you can and hit as many targets as possible. It's just a good, fun time. Visually, it's definitely one of the best looking games in this game jam. Third game is called Space Link. It's the ultimate capitalistic Docker simulator. Now the presentation of this game is amazing. It's a mini game that casts you in the role of a space docker employed by an ultra capitalist corporation solely focused on maximizing profits. Your objective: climb the corporate ladder and achieve the prestigious Employee of the Month title by expertly docking numerous ships. I don't think that it's possible to actually reach Employee of the Month. But the game just does a great job of like antagonizing you as you go along. And then there was Starfish 64. The goal is simple: just protect the Earth by punching as many asteroids as you possibly can. I just appreciated the simplicity of this gameplay loop and the pacing of it. The leaderboard is a nice touch. It is just an all-around fun, easy to pick up, easy to get hooked on game. Highly recommend checking this one out. And finally, there's Tetrux. It's basically 3D Tetris, but you're trying to pack trucks the best way that you can. It has that element of capitalism in it. There's a boss that's antagonizing you to keep doing better and being really mad at you when you don't fill up a truck all the way or when you drop cargo into the cosmos. I just thought this was a really fun twist on Tetris, and the amount of polish that was on this game. I thought this was one of the most polished projects for something that was done in a month. This game was made by the team of, I believe, 14 people, and it shows. They did a great job. So as always, I think the best way to learn is to learn by doing. So I encourage y'all to enter as many game jams as you can, but also play each other's games, give each other feedback, and help build each other up. Now, if you are curious about artificial intelligence, state trees, behavior trees, I got a lot of videos on that right now. I'd appreciate it if you check those out. Peace.